welcome back, and we are getting ready to jump into a conversation with the acting president of the National Trade Union Congress of Belize, Jacqueline Willoughby. Good morning, and welcome, and thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
First of all, I want to just catch up with you a bit, because you are not a stranger to activism in this country, nor to your work in the unions. But you'd been away for a while, and you returned to the country last October. Tell us a bit of what you've been up to and jumping back into your work with the union.
Well, I was away studying to be an attorney. But during the time I was always coming back, you know. I came back in the summer and I came back in Christmas. And I was always working with the unions. I just preferred at that point not to be saying anything on the media, but I was always there working with the unions, trying to put stuff together for them. And so now that I'm back, I'm just fully back in the saddle.
As acting president now?
As acting president.
Now, looking at the ongoing work of the unions itself, there's been quite a bit of activity that has been unfolding over the years. Just a little bit of your perspective. As you pointed out, you had been working behind the scenes as to the role of the union and their contributions to conversations and actions regarding national issues.
I feel that there has been some kind of divide among the unions themselves. I think that the aim of unity seemed to have been tampered with somewhat. Whereas unions in their autonomous fashions continue to remain united, I think that it would be fair to say that I've seen that there has been some rattling. They're not dead, they're not dormant at all, because they have contributed in one way, shape, or form of the other. But my encouragement would always to be that we come together. We must come together if we are going to see any meaningful change in Belize. Absolutely.
Now, we're going to get ready to bring on set. We have Marvin Mora with us as well, General Secretary for the Belize Energy Workers Union, and he will be joining us as well. And we're going to move into the conversation at this time about the OSH bill. But what I wanted to touch on just very quickly, Jackie, is looking at one of the most critical issues of the unions at this time. And that has been the divide that you pointed out, which was, it has been speculated for a long time that, and even spoken through the past president himself, Marvin Mora, who's with us, that there is what they call a political infiltration. In other words, people with different motives are a part of the unions and perhaps pushing with different agendas. What is your perspective on that?
I don't think I agree with the idea of political infiltration. I think I would agree more with the idea that there are different personalities come to the table. Different people understand things differently. What we need to find is that energy to ensure that all of us have common ground. Everybody is individuals. So whatever your political persuasion, as long as it doesn't affect the work that we're doing. And since I've been back, I've not seen that. I've seen, though, that there has been a little personality divide, but we are working on that.
Okay, so let's get into the issue of the OSH bill. This has been a priority of the unions for quite some time, and we have heard very openly, particularly from the private sector, the concerns regarding what it will take to implement the OSH bill. So what has been, I know you have been working to be able to come up with solutions and suggestions, and once again educating people as to why it's important that we push for this. So let's just do a quick overview of the OSH bill itself.
Okay. Perhaps people need to understand the importance of why we want the bill in the first place. The bill generally speaks to safety of workers. It's preventative. Protection of the workers, both in the workplace and in terms of what they wear to work. It causes all concerned, both employers and employees, to become more aware, to monitor, and to ensure that they just do what they're supposed to do in the workplace. This is the general principle of the OSH bill. Now, it's not unique. It derived from Convention 155, which we have signed on to some time ago.
1998.
So it is now a matter of us implementing.
Now, it's interesting because where occupational safety mechanisms are not mandated at this time. There are some companies that adopt it on their own, simply perhaps because that's part of their ethics within the company itself. But what you want to move towards is to have it regulated where each company bears essentially the liability that their workers are working under safe conditions. Is that right?
Yes, I think one of the main ingredients in dealing with the Occupational Health and Safety Act itself is for us to understand, like Jackie pointed out, why we want that. The reason is, right now, as it were, many employers and many organizations and businesses have absolutely zero processes, zero safety policies in place, which is really critical because right now we have a lot of money being spent at the Social Security Board to address the issue of injuries on the job and issues caused to our health by working conditions that could have otherwise been avoided. Moreover, you have to remember that there also have been people who have died on the job. I think we've heard of people being killed recently, even in the fields of Santander and issues of that nature. And really and truly, as a trade union, as Congress, the priority is on the OSH bill because it will save lives. One, it will save limbs, and it will save families from going through a lot of hard times. So that is primarily the reason from a trade union point of view, but also from an employer's point of view. Employers should realize, and if they just take the time to do a little research on occupational health and safety, that it is a wise thing to do. It is, however, a mid-term to a long-term solution. And that's one of the main reasons why we would see some employers want to oppose it, because they believe that what we are offering is in fact a short-term solution to a long-term problem. That's not true. Really, the bill itself also seeks to change the culture of safety in the workplace. Change the culture of safety to protect not only the worker and the employer, but also the people who might be exposed to work sites. For example, if you're building a particular structure by the side of the street, there is no safety measures in place right now that would dictate very good protection measures or policies within the workplace that would protect the people who are passing by the building, the regular passerby. So as you can see, there is so many aspects to the OSH bill that have to be addressed that are important. Right now, we are riding on the back of the worker. We are riding on the worker's pain and suffering. We are riding on the death of people to save some monies for later. The reality is that if we would invest properly and make the changes that we need in the way we address the culture of health and safety in the workplace, we would avoid ourselves a lot of losses in the long term.
And the fact is, the bill is applicable not only to work sites, construction, it's companies, manufacturers, even in the public service. In fact, I can tell you, through the Public Service Union, we have been very successful with applying this bill, even though it has not yet been passed, for the fact that now in our new regulations, in around Section 202, health and safety is in there. And we successfully got one of our members moved from a toxic environment to a less toxic environment because of her health reasons. So I don't want, even though the private sector is running with it, it's general workers across the board and employers across the board.
Yeah, but which is why I made the point of saying that we are aware of companies that do adopt this without, or have the consideration for the safety of workers without having it regulated. But what you want to do is to ensure that all employers understand that even if you are cooped up in a small office, you still have to be considerate of the working conditions of your employees.
Right, and beyond that, there are workers there are employers who have taken it their own to go even above what the Occupational Health and Safety Bill would require. Some of them have gone as far as implementing ISO standards that are a lot more strict than the ones that we have in the Act. So to be frankly honest about it, it is something that needs to be done. It is something that is the wise thing to do, given the culture of our people, given the culture of our country. That we can implement this Act is of utmost importance at this moment.
The people who will benefit the most from this bill is the larger population in this country, the workers, the people who are the actual employees in whatever different type of work that they do. Obviously, if they are all aware or understand the implications of the bill for themselves, they would be joining along and joining you in pushing for the full implementation. What have you been doing to try to educate people on the importance of the OSH bill and how they can show their support in getting it to the point of being implemented?
We have been, from the onset, we have been pushing for campaign. For example, what we're doing right now is one of the main ingredients. Coming to a talk show, coming to an interview, ensuring that companies and employees who have gone through that particular experience of implementing at least some aspect of the OSH can speak about it. I've done that even in chamber with the help of the Congress. Mm-hmm. So the Congress has been pushing far and wide. Do we have all the resources that we need that are necessary to mount a serious campaign? The answer to that will be straightforward. No, we don't have. Mm-hmm. But what we have been using for the past 5 years and more, even beyond, because we even participated in putting together the act. So when it comes to the Congress, we have really pushed we went as far as staging a protest, a small protest, if you recall, at the House of Representatives when they had a meeting. So really and truly, the people by now should be aware that the Occupational Health and Safety Act that we want the government to put on the table again is something that the Congress wants, needs, and is pushing for, not from now. And believe you me, this only spells out responsibilities for everybody, not only for the employer. Actually, there are certain things that the worker is required to do. And if the worker cannot accomplish these particular specific safety measures within the workplace and violates policies that are established, then the worker himself or herself stands to be addressed. Mm-hmm. So responsibilities go in all different directions for everybody. It's about changing culture.
But the education process, as Marvin rightly put it, started in 2009. Mm-hmm. There's been the NOSH committee that we've been participating in. Of course, he have given you the details about all the house, but my encouragement is education is continuous. Mm-hmm. And the fact is, I'm sure there are going to be some adjustments made to this bill. And my encouragement to the workers is get with your union. It has been and will continue to be an ongoing conversation even after the bill is passed. Mm-hmm. Understand?
Now, let's move directly into the issues that those who are concerned about the implementation bill have. And I hear you addressing one of the main concerns. I remember conversations with the private sector very early on was that there was a short-term mentality, or they felt there was a short-term mentality. They felt that the penalties would be far too rigid. And most importantly, the cost of moving towards ensuring that your workplace is fully compliant with the OSH bill is one that was a fundamental challenge for them. So I want to first ask, before you address their concerns, what has been the engagement from the unions with the private sector and even the different government departments? I would imagine Ministry of Health should have a key role in this. The Labor Department should have a key role in this. What is the level of engagement at this point in time?
Let me address all of those because there are 4 different things that you pointed out. Let me start with the first one. The level of engagement has been thorough and even from the onset, because all of these different players that you just mentioned were part of the NOSH or the committee that came about drafting that bill. To be frankly open about it, also Chamber was the one that had the most voice within, because they were the ones that were always pushing for lesser penalties or for changes that would suit their business agenda, and we were fine with all of that. Mm-hmm. It really came to a surprise to us that eventually they said, you know what, we're not going to ride with the bill at the very end when it was placed on the table. So it really came to a shocker to the Congress that they had said that when indeed they were part and parcel of the entire process from the very beginning. But beyond that, apart from the issue that we made a presentation that was spearheaded by the Social Security Board at their conference, we've also tried to emphasize on 2 main areas. One, the fact that the entire bill itself is, in fact, a long-term solution. It is not a short-term issue. And one key aspect within that bill is the fact that the minister can take as long as he wants to implement it in phases, so that it does not drop as sudden change for everybody. Plus, the way it is going to be rolled out, there is an authority that has to be formed. That authority is charged with one or several duties, but one of their duties is actually to ensure that they put together the regulations.
Yeah.
So it is not something that will happen overnight, but the act itself must be placed in, because that's the foundation on which everything else will be built on. So when it comes to cars, really and truly, I've mentioned it and I will keep mentioning it. Right now, the employer is saying they don't want to bear the cost, but the cost is being placed on the back of the worker. It's on the worker's pain and suffering. It's on the worker's family having to go through hardship because of the fact that their loved one get exposed to environments that hurt them, and they end up in hospitals or end up bedridden and stuff like that. The worker is paying the price right now. We want to move away from that. Apart from the fact that we've mentioned that Social Security Board is in fact bearing a cost, a literal cost in the millions of dollars.
And that may be the effect of them wanting to raise the wage band. And if you read their recent Montas report about their long-term and short-term branch, about monies going short in either one and they have to be transferring, then it simply means that if we don't pass this bill, the fact of the matter is we will continue to bear the brunt of it.
Of course, what you're speaking about is the fact that the Social Security Board is the one who compensates when people have been injured on the job. So you want to mitigate the injuries that are taking place in the first place.
But I want to point out that even though business would make it seem as they have all these major expenses, this bill brings responsibility both to the employer and the employees. At this point, listen to me, you either want to pay the bill through Social Security where we are bearing, or you'll pay it through court. And of late, workers have been becoming very bright. They take their court and the cost is even much higher. And how could you even deem a bill to be short-term? There's a committee that continues to ensure that the regulations are implemented and monitored and followed. There is the inspectorate. The inspectorate now is like a whole new department, because these people will continue to come and check and check and check.
Like your health inspectors.
Yeah, man.
Right.
You see? So I don't, insofar as our collaboration is concerned, we have principally agreed that we would get back to just go through the bill and see how. So we have not really done that yet, but we have made a commitment to do that. We know that the bill is going back to the House shortly. So we can't bury our head in the sand. Neither the workers nor the employers can bury their heads in the sand, because it's going to go back to the House. And we have people like our waterfront workers. We have people in construction sites. We have people in the sugar industry. 2 have died so far in the sugar industry. And yes, I commend those companies that have gone above and beyond in ensuring that some form of safety or something is placed within their environment. But we need all on board.
Then Marlene, just to punctuate something there. You mentioned about cost saving, and I want to also highlight the fact that most companies around the world engage in dealing with occupational health and safety because it is a cost-saving measure. Of course, it's a long-term plan. It is not something that will yield cash to you immediately, but it is something that will definitely start to affect your bottom line as you go along dealing with issues of injury and health safety issues within the workplace. For example, you'll have less downtime. Your workers will be available to do more work. They will be more productive. They'll feel safer, so they work better.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the key things that you have pointed out with the OSH bill before, how it can increase productivity. Now, you call it a partnership between employer and employee, a workplace partnership. Let's talk about the responsibilities from the workers' end if the OSH bill is rolled out as is.
Oh, great. The workers have several things that they have to address. One of them is they have to participate in a joint workplace health and safety committee that will have aspects of both employers and employees involved. The employees themselves are tasked to be the ones that will monitor their own safety at many given points, and they are also tasked with following procedures and policies that will be implemented within the very same scope of health and safety.
So you would have your co-workers form a committee to monitor your own, whether or not you abide.
Once it's a workplace that has more than 5 people, it will be, I think it's more
Has to
than
have
5.
a committee.
If it's only 5 or so, they will only have to select one person that will be tasked with that particular duty.
Okay.
But Section 11 and 12 of the bill points out clearly what the workers has to do. So if in an area where you need to be wearing protective gears, you need to be wearing protective gears. If there are rules about how you're going to use machinery, then you have to follow those rules about how you're going to. You can refuse, the worker has a reprisal to refuse to work if those things are not in place. He cannot refuse if he's an essential worker, if he takes care of people in hospital, in the elderly home and that kind of thing. But he has a responsibility. So imagine you're not wearing the protective gear that you were given and something happens. The employer would not be liable for your injuries.
Because they have provided all the safety mechanisms,
Exactly.
but you don't execute them effectively. And that's key. You don't also want to build a situation where there isn't some sort of balance, and that is what that creates. Now, I want to speak to the workers of Belize at this point in time and have them understand clearly where we have been functioning, or they have been functioning, perhaps in environments that aren't as safe as they should be, but they have been managing fine. In other words, you may not have realized that there was a safer way to do it, that the employer had more responsibility in ensuring your safety. Let's talk about some of the clear areas or particular sectors where you are seeing the greatest need for the occupational and safety health legislations.
One of the biggest areas, Marlene, that has to be addressed and has to be addressed as fast as possible is the construction, the construction sector of the country. We've seen most of the injuries, and you can check with the Social Security Board, most of the injuries come from that sector. So really, that's where we need to start looking with a more serious note, because I believe that there are a lot of changes that they can do in the way they manage their electrical, in the way they manage their safety gear. And we generally, as people, for example, we want to put in a nail on the wall. We're not the type of people, because we're raised in this macho culture, to put on goggles and to wear, for example, a safety boot just in case your hammer drops on your toe, or the type of situation where the nail just spins around and hits you in the eye. Which one is cheaper? I guess you can't buy an eye, right? So goggles is only about $12. So the reality is that there's a lot of things that we will be required to do as workers that will start to change the way we address the workplace period, and it will become something that we'll carry home as well.
And it's not that the workers didn't know, Long before this bill, you would have people come and approaching us and letting us know the conditions they're working under. But here's the thing, there was no bill. And here's the second thing, my pay may not be big enough for me to go and get all of what I need. So you put yourself through that risk because you need to eat.
I was just going to say, given the economic times, people may choose to work in an unsafe environment because they need to be able to provide for families or for themselves.
See, and that's the beauty about this bill, because this bill says, if I come to a workplace where these gears isn't there, the environment isn't safe, I don't have to work. I can refuse to work, you see?
Until the matter is addressed.
But will you still receive your salary that you're supposed to get? In other words, if I want to, on principle, say I want my helmet and my goggles before I go onto the work site, am I also jeopardizing being able to feed my family tonight and tomorrow night?
Not at all.
No.
The bill offers protection from retaliation on behalf of the employer. So that in itself would spell out the fact that the employer also has the responsibility to continue to pay your hourly until the issue is addressed. And it must be addressed in line with what the Act would say.
And that's why it requires a culture change. A culture change, because I can see Chamber saying, yes, but then you cost we more. But that's why it requires a culture change. Because even as Chamber may have some, even as the private sector and the public sector may have some responsibility to transform workplaces, workers have a responsibility to cooperate,
And
to
comply.
ensure they comply.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, you see, so it requires now a culture change. I want to be safe, and the employer wants to make money. So we have to partner.
Now, in addition to looking at what we have called unsafe practices, that the hazards are there and you can see it when we talk about construction work and whatnot, but you also talk about unhealthy practices, and this is, I think, where a lot of the expenses may come, because the teachers, for example, when they're here, they speak about the use of chalk, the dust chalk within the classrooms, which many places have moved away from. They've spoken about being in old buildings where there's asbestos or mold.
Right.
We have very old buildings that still have these issues. Some of the government offices, for
Yes.
example, when you talk about the public
Yes.
sector. And even while it may seem like a very foreign concept, the type of furniture that you're using if you're at a desk job. Let's look at some of those issues and what we call more the unhealthy practices that have a long-term impact.
Yes, for example, I am aware of a case at BTL, right? I don't know exactly what happened afterwards, but I'm aware of a case of a worker that was affected because of a carpet that was on a particular building that had mold. And the worker developed a type of disease that's related to that type of exposure. And eventually the worker had to stop working. Now, where is the responsibility? Where should the responsibility lie? You see, these are the issues that would have to be addressed by that bill. That bill addresses not only the issue of safety in regards to safety gear and policies, but also in regards to the working condition, because it's also looking at the aspect of health. So there are many, if you look at the bill and you go through the bill, realize that many things that the inspectorate will be able to do to be able to put the employer on a different path and try to address those issues relating to health and the working condition and the working environment.
And I could, right off the top of my head, I could tell you about several cases. I can tell you about cases of rural health nurses having to be in houses that with rat-bat feces. I can tell you about my own experience working in a certain office in Belmopan where there was mold, and I got ill and I came out of the office and said that has to be cleaned. I can tell you about cases of asbestos where we know in the public service people had gotten cancer over that matter. And I can tell you about the most recent case of one of our workers who was working in an environment where they were cleaning it with like Clorox and that kind of thing. And she got like a permanent sickness, and we fought and they moved her. But here's the point. Here's the point I'm making about just throwing these examples out. Even when there was not an OSH bill, there was the issue of unsafety. I can tell you about most of the stores on Albert Street who don't even have a simple bathroom for a pregnant woman. You understand what I'm saying?
Or a fire exit.
They don't even have water. These are all occupational and safety issues. I can tell you when people want water, they have to walk and then they don't even get the time off, because then time off becomes an issue. This comes to regulate all of that, to put things together. Now, how much a water cooler would that really cost you? You see what I'm saying? For the money you're making. So it's not that we want, the trade union congress is not about burdening the private sector, about burdening the public sector. But if we get into a habit in Belize that prevention is truly better than cure, all economic woes that we're feeling both in our businesses and perhaps in our governments would somehow be minimized or managed.
Agreed.
A safer and healthier environment very clearly could lead to better productivity. We know that.
Yes.
But we also know, and you pointed it out in this conversation as well, it's a paradigm shift that has to take place. It's a cultural shift that has to take place. And I would dare to say that even the people who are concerned about implementation understand that it is necessary. But perhaps the concern is, how punitive will it be? In other words, if the bill is passed and the legislations are in place, and I cannot get perhaps the finances together to create a proper exit in my building, or a fire exit in my building, or to be able to get everything up to what the standards are, will I already be at a disadvantage that I will have penalties to face before I can even get up to par?
No, not at
That's
all.
not a John directly approach.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's not a John directly approach.
Not at all.
It is, if you read the bill, things come down in phases.
Yep.
I mean, we know where we live. I'll be sure not Trump. All our name not finish with Trump. You understand what I'm saying? And we are reasonable people. We're saying over time we can get this. We've been working in this condition, you know. We're simply saying that we're at the place in the 21st century where we're not going to accept it anymore because people are dying, people are getting sick. So we're simply saying implement in stages, but if you make no move to implement at all, then we'll have a problem.
Of course, the bill itself is not punitive at the front end. It is actually punitive way at the back end. There's so much things that will have to happen in order for you to be able to be fined or to even sit down in front of a judge. The reality is that the bill was structured as a guideline more than is a punitive measure. It was designed in a way that it would point out to the employer and the employee what are the things that need to be addressed first. And of course there will be a roadmap, a strategy on how to implement these particular changes in the workplace and in the different work environments that the worker is exposed to. But at the end of the day, the reality is that the bill itself is not punitive. And it would offer all the necessary ingredients. For example, the ministry would be in charge of ensuring through the inspectorate and through the NOSH, which is an authority, to ensure that all employers and employees receive the proper training in regards to health and safety in the workplace, so that everybody is aware of what will be the changes and how to now manage around those changes.
But significant to note though, this bill causes people to police themselves.
Yep.
Even before an inspectorate comes in, even before a NOSH committee has to come in. Because in every workplace, there has to be a committee that is made up of both the employer and the employee. So it can't be that we will have a committee there and parties involved, the stakeholders would not notice, you see? And the reality is this: none of us as workers want to see any business shut down because we need employment. So the fact is, we're going to work together. So it's not a private sector or business, you have to do everything. It is private sector, business, public sector, labor. We have to come together if we're going to survive this work.
So you speak about the different committees that are in place, essentially the structural hierarchy in the implementation and monitoring of the OSH bill, or the different practices and standards that have to be in place. Let's break that down. So first of all, in a workplace over 5 employees, with over 5 employees, you'll establish a committee. That's your ground level, right?
Right.
That is a committee that is comprised of both the employer
And employee.
and
Equal
workers,
representation.
right?
Yeah.
And then where does it go from there?
The ability of putting that committee together is to us paramount, because once you establish that committee, then the issues don't become their issues against our issues. It becomes our issues. It becomes us rather than we and them. And because of that paradigm shift right at the workplace, then we will start to see the necessary changes that have to be brought about to develop that culture. So putting that committee together itself is something that is commendable. That's something that will create the changes that we need. But beyond that, that committee has certain responsibilities. Apart from the fact that that committee will be in charge of making recommendations to the employer as to how to address certain issues, that committee will also be tasked with investigating accidents, near misses, incidents within the workplace that may have resulted as somebody violating a policy or a particular aspect of safety is not in place. So the committee has a lot of work to do. Plus, the inspectorate will be working very closely with that committee as well as the trade unions. So it's a committee for everybody. It's a committee that will provide that guideline that Jackie was talking about. That guideline that the employer and the employee must follow in order for us to create that safety environment at work.
So from the committee level, you move into the inspectorate.
Inspectorate.
Right.
The inspectorate will always be coming.
Yeah.
And it's not planned inspection, you know.
Yeah.
They will always just be coming to check. Because one of the...
It's like your health inspectors, which we
key
already
things
know
the workers
about,
must remember. Committee facilitates the development of the standards in accordance with what the bill says. The same committee supervises and monitors to ensure that we're doing what we're supposed to do. The same committee evaluates themselves, you see? So if you have this mechanism in-house to start taking care of yourself, I'm certain sure that if you find something out of place, you will not leave it there. So the inspectorate, when they come, will now come and have to report you to the NOSH, to the NOSH committee. The NOSH committee will come in, if in fact they have to, and they give you penalty notices. Now the beautiful thing about a penalty notice is you may not have to find yourself in court. It can be settled out of court, you see? And once that matter is settled, it's done. Nobody can go and decide we're going to appeal or push it any further. You see? So I think the bill has, even though it's not high strong on offenses and penalty, albeit it does have offenses and penalty, the fact is it is high strong on promoting the issue of safety and high strong on promoting the issue of business going further.
And education.
So there is a warning system also included.
You warn yourself, the inspector warn you, and then NOSH can check with you if you need to do it.
Now, the responsibility of financing whatever changes need to happen come directly from the employer. Is that the case?
Naturally.
Okay. So when we talk about the phased approach, do you have a specific timeline set out as to when ideally you would like to have perhaps minimum standards implemented and then to move from there?
Those matters we will, and when we get into our discussions, we're going to factor those in. We have not, remember I said we have not discussed in detail as yet, but we're just now going to look at this bill, business and us, in detail and see how we can facilitate as well as ensure that we keep a standard.
And beyond that, Marlene, the approach that will be coming out of the Act is the fact that the NOSHA will be the one that will be responsible for putting together the standards and the responsibilities through regulations. So the most important aspect of that particular authority is ensuring that there is collaboration from all the different sectors. So all the different stakeholders come together, they form the NOSHA, they work along with government, and they are the same ones that set the different standards. Remember, we're dealing with different types of industries. So you cannot expect that the same way you handle the people in the construction area will handle the people in the factories, will handle the people in tourism. Everyone, and of course the deadlines will be different because of the simple fact that some of those incur some heavy costs. And those costs have to be taken into consideration, have to be factored in as to when the NOSHA itself would recommend for a specific timeline in regards to establishing at least the basic standards and then moving on from there.
Now, as it stands right now, if a worker, a member of a union, identifies issues within their workplace that are unsafe or unhealthy, what are their options?
Their options is they can challenge it, like I've described to you. Within the public service, for instance, we had that situation. We had the situation where the worker was in a hospital setting, and the cleaning agents became very, very toxic for her. And it was for years. That case took us almost 9 months to fight. But the fact is, we highlighted the issue of the convention. You see, there's this underlying principle that once you sign on to a convention, the citizens of that country has the expectation to believe that what is in there applies to us, even if we have not domesticated the bill as yet. And so we use the rigors of the convention, what appeared in this bill, and went to visit the workplace, and we were successful. So all is not lost. You can bring it. Now I know in the private sector, there may be a tendency to use the beautiful clause 37 in the labor law when they don't want to address issues. That is the clause that does not that allows the private sector to go without providing reasoning. We want to discourage that practice because if there are things that were going before that and we can pinpoint those things, then the worker has a case. You see, but we don't want to put everything in the court realm. We want to come to this place where we can actually have conversations. This is a new era. This is the 21st century. People need to work. Businesses need to make money, and we need to move forward to try and help our economy. So we're not coming from the high strong place that we want to confront, we want to fight. We do not want to do that. We would prefer to discuss and to move forward together.
Currently, for example, at BEL, like I explained in many different programs, BEL already has most of the aspects of the OSH already implemented. And that's one of the reasons why we have also established the Joint Workplace Committee, which looks at incidents or looks at different aspects, make recommendations, and ensures that we, all of us, follow the law, follow the policy. Now, in the case where a worker gets hurt at BEL, they don't only have the joint workplace, but they also have the union to come to,
yeah.
and of course, eventually the courts if we have to go that route. To be honest with you, for many years in BL, we've seen a lot of changes. We've seen so far that people have been adapting themselves. For example, if you ever ride with a BEL worker, he will tell you, kindly wear a seatbelt. Mm-hmm. It becomes part of them. Mm-hmm. It becomes part of who they are as a person, mm-hmm. that they actually expect everybody else to ride along with that. Whenever they park facing forward, wherever they are. And this is the type of change that we're looking for, like Jackie mentioned. It's a paradigm shift rather than this we against them even in the courtroom.
Now you have been pushing for the bill to be passed for quite some time. You have the draft, you're going back to the draft to work out the final details. You said you are at the point where you want to re-engage the different sectors to ensure that you can come to as reasonable or as an agreeable document or policy as you can. How much political will have you been getting in your lobbying efforts to be able to bring the bill to the House and have it passed? You mentioned earlier that it'll happen soon.
It will happen soon. I think the government is considering after the budget to bring it, and you know the budget is fireworks. So mm-hmm. I think the government is considering to bring the bill back to the House sometime at the end of March or very early April.
Now, given the economic times that we're facing right now, and we can be sure that this will probably be part of the concern that comes out of the private sector. Yeah. There are great concerns about how the economy is functioning at this time, and to introduce this bill that does require financing by the private sector. Do you think it is the best time to move in this direction?
Yes. I would say a resounding yes. And I'd say a resounding yes because let us examine this economic times. Social Security is complaining about the high injury claims they're getting. Mm-hmm. So much so that they're seeking to try and get a wage band increase. Mm-hmm. The private sector is saying, this is going to cost me a whole lot. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But here's the reality. If somebody dies right now in your workplace, isn't it going to cost you a little bit more? Mm-hmm. Isn't it going to cost you unexpected money? Why not ride with a standard that seeks to implement prevention, a prevention principle that also allays responsibility not only on an employer, but on the employee. Mm-hmm. And it secures the employer in a sense. Because if the worker did not follow the rule, the employer can easily fire and he wouldn't have to see me.
Or wash his hands off the issue.
You see?
All right. Anything else you'd like to say about the OSH bill, or where people can get information, find out more, or perhaps join in your advocacy cause?
I just want to encourage all the affiliates of the Trade Union Congress and all workers of this country by extension. We would be, in the future, we're going to try to do some training about it. What we want to do right now is we want to get to see if we're going to be doing any amendments. But people need to be queuing in. The information is not hard to find. You can always come to the National Trade Union Congress, call Mr. Marvin. We have a nice little OSH committee set up. So if it is that in your workplace, your workers want to know or the employer want to know, we're prepared to come and share with you.
Not only that, Marilyn, I would advise here, the employers and the employees, try to seek that knowledge in regards to occupational health and safety in the workplace. And for those employers that really mean good for their employees, I would also advise them, start to implement aspects of it. It is not that hard. You log online and start to research occupational health and safety standards that you need to set in regards to the type of business you're engaging, and you could easily start to deal with the major issues, and don't wait until the act becomes a reality to start to cry foul.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about the Heroes and Benefactors exhibit, and of course, what's being done to preserve the history and the iconic people who've contributed over time. We'll have that conversation after the break.